Well, welcome to the sixth Las Vegas chapter of Startup Grind. We started this in September of last year. I think there were about 60 chapters when we started. There's now 80, so the global group, which is based in Silicon Valley, has been growing fast. The reason I'm wearing this lovely jacket here is because I just came from the Global Startup Grind conference, their second one, in Silicon Valley, where we were awarded Best New Chapter.
Is that from a 3D printer? Or?
It's not from a 3D printer, but it probably could be. You probably could have knocked this out pretty well, right?
Yeah, probably better.
Probably better, yes.
I could put your face on it, too.
You could have put my face on it, exactly.
There you go.
So, so Startup Grind, for those, how many people have been to a Startup Grind before? Okay, about a third of the crowd. Well, welcome to the new folks. We are trying to build this into something that gets 100 people every time. We've had a couple of ones that came close. We had one that actually exceeded it in December when we had Jordan Kelly from RoboCoin talk about the first Bitcoin ATM that he built right here in Las Vegas. We did that on the Strip as part of the Inside Bitcoins conference. We move around, unlike many cities that have one set venue. We move around the city because I moved to Las Vegas from Los Angeles, and before that I grew up in New York about 7 years ago. And I did notice that there's a little bit of separation between people on the west side don't go to the east side, and the east side don't go to the west side. And a lot of the tech scene is downtown. A lot of the angels are out in Anthem, and I wanted to sort of move it around the city a little bit so every neighborhood sort of gets it a couple times a year. And if you really like what it is, you get to see other parts of the city. Living a lot of time in LA, I know the feeling from Santa Monica versus Hollywood versus Pasadena. So Startup Grind is a global community started by Derek Anderson. Each city has a city director. In that case, it's me because he asked me when I met him at South by Southwest last year. And we basically just once a month gather to bring great entrepreneurs to talk to the audience about entrepreneurship and how they built their startup company. And it's an hour-long fireside chat format, and then the crowd gets to network with them. And we're a combination of sort of bringing in great people from the outside world, which everybody comes to Vegas, whether they want to or not, at least once a year it seems, certainly once in their lives. And really this year I'm also trying to start out with local heroes, people who the average person doesn't necessarily know is based in Las Vegas and is running a great company. So, again, we brought Jordan Kelly. A lot of people saw the news on the first Bitcoin ATM, $1 million its first month in Vancouver. A lot of them didn't know, built right here in Las Vegas. We brought the Stacy Hatsuka, who started Net Zero, based right here in Las Vegas now, running another great company, Tungo. And today we've got Henry Liu, who is the founder of Full Spectrum Laser, great company based right here in Las Vegas. And Henry, you moved from Silicon Valley, from Stanford University, you came here to Las Vegas. What led you? We'll get a little bit back to your what brought you into the field, but what, as an entrepreneur looking to do something in the hot 3D space, led you to leave the motherland of funding and engineers and come to Las Vegas?
Well, I guess it was like an organic thing. So I graduated from Stanford, and then my first job was in Las Vegas. So I worked there for 2 years at another startup, developing software for the government. And then I branched out on my own, and I saw the kind of great environment in Las Vegas. So that's what kept me here.
And which was your first company that you worked with here?
Telesecurity Sciences.
Okay. And when did you then sort of get the idea, or when did you get the interest in sort of 3D printers and see that you could do something different and better than what the state of the art was?
Well, we started selling lasers, and actually I started out with 3D, and then we deviated to lasers, kind of looking to power our 3D printers, and then we came back full circle to 3D printers. So I guess I started the company in 2011, and we were making laser cutters and laser engravers and software for laser cutters and laser engravers. as well as electronics. And based on the things that we learned from those laser experiences, we made a laser 3D printer. So it's been like kind of a circle coming around.
And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's on display right at the back, and that's the newest 3D laser printer that Full Spectrum funded through a Kickstarter. And you've had a couple of Kickstarters now, which has sort of been, a lot of people have tried to use Kickstarters for funding and they fall flat on their face. What would you ascribe to? I mean, you raised almost $800,000 from that, and you had a previous one that you raised a few $100,000 for as well. I mean,
yeah. So our first one we raised like about $300,000. This one we raised about $830,000.
Okay. So what would you describe as the reasons for being able to succeed? The category, the way that you define the product, the pricing?
Well, I think Kickstarter, people want something cool. So being in the right category is very important, of course, and also having a product that's very close to finish, so that you can ship quickly, and also kind of offering it at a large discount over what's available currently.
Okay. That's a good point, because a lot of people on Kickstarter are, hey, give me $1 million and I'm going to go build something and it's going to ship sometime in 2016.
Yeah.
So you were able to basically show in the video that it's kind of working in prototype now and it's going to ship within. I mean, how long after the Kickstarter is the unit shipping?
About 3 months. So
3 months.
We are actually very familiar with manufacturing. I guess a lot of people don't know, how to build stuff and build it in quantity, but a lot of the parts actually take several months to build. So like motors might take like 2 months lead time, plus a month on the boat. Say you buy from China, plus like customs clearance and all that stuff. So we bought a lot of the components up front already. So we said that we had the long lead time parts already in stock, so we were able to ship in about 3 months.
Okay. And well, talk us through a little bit of the history of sort of 3D printing and the importance of it. I mean, let's start with the importance of it. What is 3D printing, even when it started with the $500,000 printers? What does it enable us to do that wasn't possible 10 years ago?
Well, I guess people ask, like, what can you build with a 3D printer? And really, you can build anything, which is kind of an interesting statement. But 3D printers are really good for customization, and we're kind of living in a world that's turning towards customization. So instead of having something designed for millions of people, you could have it designed especially for you. So some of the early applications, like dentistry, printing crowns, but even now, like prosthetics. So there was a 3D printed prosthetics for children, because they grow out of them every few months. And everyone's different, so having the right size, having a customized ability is very important. So the world, I think, is trending more and more towards being unique and having something built for you, as opposed to just going with the masses. So that's really what 3D printing enables people to do. So a lot of big car companies, like their Formula One parts, they'll prototype it on a 3D printer. It gives them a lot more ability to test more radical ideas. Nike will prototype their shoes on 3D printers, but I think the thing that we've moved towards is having a 3D printer that's affordable for anyone to own. So, instead of just going to a multi-million-dollar company, and it's like, I want one prototype for this Nike shoe, individual designers can build their own shoe. Jewelry is a big thing, so you want to be unique in jewelry. You can print out your rings, investment cast them, and only you will have that ring. So like, it's something that enables, say, entrepreneurs. So you want to build a new iPhone case, but how to get money for it to produce it, like to show it to people. So by designing it and then printing it yourself, it really gives you the power to quickly iterate through design, and also sometimes you just want to build something unique, and it would make no sense doing it any other way.
What would you say the difference is in terms of application level, people wanting to build a prototype and save tens of thousands of dollars versus people just wanting to do one-off custom art, custom, I have the only one?
Well, I think the prototypes are usually well-funded. So I guess that was the initial target market. So if Nike wants to build a shoe, they have billions of dollars, it's okay, they can buy an expensive 3D printer. But if you're an artist, you're basically eating peanuts all day. And then the idea is that if you have an affordable printer, then you can make those dreams come true, and that's what we're trying to do. And we think we open up new markets by making the printer something affordable. So it's really just like a high-end computer, a few $1,000s.
How about in the middle between Nike and Starving Artist? Is this an application that startups who are looking to do a prototype instead of going to a machine shop and getting the prototype made, they can get something that's good enough quality to show a group of investors to say this is what it's going to look like?
Exactly, and actually a lot of startups use low volume production in 3D printing too. So I went to a hardware innovation workshop in San Francisco, and everyone used a 3D printer, almost without exception, to build their prototypes. So some people were building hearing aids, some people were building game consoles. So like these things, I guess it actually takes quite a bit of work and know-how to produce things. Like, so we own some expensive manufacturing equipment, CNC mills. We have a CNC mill lathe. We have a 400-watt fiber laser for cutting metal. But those are very expensive components. But not only that, but you also require specialized skill to learn how to use them. So you can't just put in your drawing and then it just does it. You have to figure out all the tool paths, how fast you go, and so forth. So that learning curve is actually quite high. And as an entrepreneur, I guess you don't have time for that to be an expert at everything. Mm-hmm. Whereas a 3D printer, you just put in your model, hit print, and it pops out. So it really frees your imagination from kind of the little details, which is a big change.
That's an interesting point because we'd worked a number of years ago with Shapeways when they first started doing the software that would let you go in and that involved some CAD/CAM. I mean that did involve some design work and so here basically with you having your own 3D printer on your desk, you can literally just make something of clay or make something of whatever surface it is and put it in there. It scans it from all angles and spits it out. How do you control for color and for different fabrics and materials rather?
Drawing in 3D is still something that's not that trivial, but actually one of the big innovations that we have is the 3D printing app store. Mm-hmm. So we realize like not everybody can design a 3D model, but sometimes you just want something cool. So if you have the new Batman structure, instead of going to the store and buying that, you can actually just print it from our online app store. So somebody else has designed it, and it's available on the touchscreen on the front of the printer. So this is unique. So before, certainly engineers could design little widgets, balls and gears and things like that. But like artists can actually sell things. They design a very cool face, like some sort of like monster statue or something like that, and you can actually print it, directly from your printer and pay a small royalty to them. And that's what we're trying to develop. Like really twofold, like developing a community for artists to be able to show their 3D printed things, and also for a way for people to buy them and get them at low cost.
So for example, I mean, and there's examples of the output in the back there. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it, but you really should. There's some really intricate little balls that have like little layers within layers, and I know you at CES showed a replica of the Eiffel Tower that was incredibly intricate. If say somebody is wanting to do I don't know, like a 3-inch figurine of a Disney character or some character that they own the IP to, what's the cost of materials going to be once you buy the printer?
So we charge about $100 a liter, which is about $100 a kilogram. But a lot of times you can print the models hollow. So the Eiffel Tower was 9 inches tall. That's about $7 to print. A small statue that's say 5 inches tall could be $3 or $4 if it's hollowed out. Okay. So it's very affordable in terms of materials. But like our quality is much higher than the other printers that exist now in the consumer space. So traditionally, you have a hot glue gun, and it moves around and deposits like hot glue, and it builds up this really rough 3D printer. But we have a laser. Our laser hits a liquid, hardens the liquid instantly, and then because there's no force on the model, and the laser spot size is so small, we get really fine details. So you can print something that's really realistic looking in terms of the face. We print the Eiffel Tower with all the trusses perfectly coming out. So it opens up a lot more capabilities for 3D printing.
Now at the price point that you have, which I know the Kickstarter was a little over $2,000 and the final SRP might be $3,500 or something like that, where do you sort of see the applications? Do you see it going to artists? Do you see it going to someone starting a service bureau? Combination? I mean, I would think thered be a business for someone, sort of starting a service bureau, just here's my investment of like, $3,500 in my laptop and my know-how, and I just put up a sign and say 3D printing and, $7 material in my time and charge somebody $30.
Yeah, I mean, like, certainly if you can print things yourself, you save a lot of money. So if I FedEx a package from here to New York, it could be $50. So if you can print it yourself for $2 or $3, that saves that shipping cost alone, as well as having it instantly and not having to ship it through. But say you're working also remotely with your team. So you have an engineering team in the Bay Area, you have a software team in New York, and then your manufacturing plant in Detroit or something. All those people can share ideas by sending them models and not having to save on shipping, or saving on shipping, and also.
So if they all have 3D printers at their desk, you could just send the model, they print it.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have to ship it.
Interesting.
You get it kind of instantly. But in terms of sales, we sell a lot to people who already have 3D printers, and that's kind of our basic strategy. So developing the market demand is quite a difficult task and a very expensive one. But we're fortunate there's other companies that were kind of pioneers, like MakerBot and so forth. But what we do is we offer superior quality and superior speed, also at an affordable price. So if you compare our prints with their prints, our prints are vastly better. So a lot of people already have a 3D printer, they're using them in kind of their daily lives, and they want to upgrade to the next thing. And that's where we see kind of making a lot of our transactions. But in terms of what do they do, we have a lot of artists, we have a lot of schools, we have a lot of home users who are inventors. So those are the kind of people who are kind of the first adopters, I think. But we really want to get it to the hands of everybody. So we sell laser cutters. We sell it's amazing how many people we sell laser cutters to. So we sell laser cutters to people that are retired, and they're retired from the military, and they're just engraving badges. People are engraving bats. Kids are engraving chocolate for their classroom.
And so what are the economics of laser cutters then?
Well, a laser cutter is much faster. So basically, a laser moves in 2D, and then it just basically anything you can print, it'll just instead of printing it with ink, it'll just hit it with a laser, and it'll cut it out. So because it's a 2D slice, then it's very fast. It's just drawing the perimeter. 3D printer, basically, you're kind of taking many 2D slices and stacking them up on top of each other, so it's much slower. But we really think laser cutter should be a tool that should be in every garage. Just like you have a scroll saw, or you have many other tools. But if you go to these hacker spaces like Tech Shop, or you go to some one in Vegas, a Sin Shop. So they all have a laser cutter, and the laser cutter is the most used tool because it's very easy to use. Basically, anything you draw in 2D, you hit print, it comes out, it pops right out of the laser cutter. In 3D, we realized one of the challenges is actually drawing in 3D. So we support people on a day-to-day basis selling laser cutters, and we know they have a hard enough time drawing in 2D, trying to draw in 3D is actually a bit more challenge. But that's why we have the 3D printing store. So people that already have drawn things in 3D, you can just hit, go to the touch screen, select what you want, hit prints, and then it'll pop out.
And what's the price of your most affordable laser cutter?
We sell it about $2,000 also.
Okay.
So it's about the same market.
Okay. And about how many? What's the current market for laser 3D printers? I mean,
Yeah, sure.
I know
So we have a report from Holler's. They said, I think MakerBot. Well, the ones below $5,000 sold about 55,000 units last year. I think total market share is probably in the $2 to $8 billion range. So there's a wide variety, but a lot of those are kind of high-end printers. So 3D printers purchased by GE that are $1 million, printing airplane parts and stuff like that.
So 50,000 units is still a tiny, tiny, tiny market.
Yeah, 55.
That's smaller than Bitcoins.
Yeah, 50,000 units, maybe $2,000 each, so $100 million market. But it's growing rapidly.
And so what was it maybe the year before?
I think it increased about 50% to it.
Okay.
So it was increasing 100% every year. And then there was a huge spike, about 400% when I guess MakerBot really pushed their 3D printer, and then it kind of tapered off a little bit to a 50% growth last year, I think. And the reason we think that happened was, well, everybody who needed a 3D printer bought one, like one of these low-cost ones, and then they were done. So they're still growing kind of the knowledge and stuff, but the people that wanted one could buy one. But that's where we think we come in that we have the next generation of 3D printers. So it's the 2.0 of 3D printing now.
Okay. Now, obviously we see this game happen over and over and over in technology where something comes in and is extremely expensive at first. I remember the very first DVD players or the DVD recorders were like $7,000, and now you can get a DVD-R for like, probably $7.
Yeah, sure.
Certainly at retail for about 20. So how low do you think upon volume can the price get in time? And if it came down to say like $500 or $300, I mean, because you can get a color laser printer for paper now, you know, from Hewlett Packard that not that long ago was thousands of dollars for $299 at Best Buy. I never thought that would have come down that fast. I mean, how big do you see the market, and at what price point is it going to have to hit? And do you think that's reasonable to assume that it can happen within 5 years or so?
Well, you know, you can buy an inkjet printer for like $15. You can get an inkjet printer for free.
Yeah.
And how they make their money back is the consumables. So, you know, 3D printer is a similar thing where you can make the money back in consumables. So I think, you know, you could be getting 3D printers for free. You know, they give away your 3D printer to you. You print things, you buy their ink. So it's a good relationship all around. So yeah, I think certainly there's such a large, you know, market for it. Just like the things you could do. So, you know, we come from a 3D printing space, and it's interesting how many people ask us, so what does a 3D printer do? So we're still educating people. So we're not just taking advantage of, you know, like people that buy cameras. Like, you know, what does a camera do? Well, they take pictures, and everybody just assumes that. But like, you know, what do you do with a 3D printer? And it's kind of in that pioneering stage still. So there's still a lot of people to educate. But at the same time, the price is dropping, of course, and the quality is going up. So that's a big thing. So you can buy a printer now, a 3D printer, for like $300 on Kickstarter. But you know, people just won't accept the quality. So the quality is quite poor. Again, you're using a hot glue gun. Imagine what it looks like if you just had a big mess of hot glue. That's what their printers did. But now we have basically you know, quality that you can get from injection molding. So something you would buy in the store, you would print at home. So that's really the big change, I think. So increasing quality and decreasing price. You know, and I think a combination of those two will produce a 3D printer in everybody's house.
Okay. So that's a big jump from 50,000 units to a 3D printer in everybody's house. Of course, Bill Gates sounded crazy when, you know, he said there'd be a desktop PC in everybody's house. And
well, yeah, just like a regular printer. I mean, like, I guess when I first came out, it's like, oh, why do you want to print things at home? Like, but everybody has a printer now. It's just more convenient. So, you know, if you need to pop something out, like, so they think later on, if you break something on your refrigerator, you break your door, your car has a knob that broke, you know, the manufacturer could just send you that file, and you just print it at home. They wouldn't have to mail it to you. So, like, you know, it's not just like what you could build, but say you have an ecosystem of parts, like this chair, for example, if I broke this little arm or this little screw, you know, the manufacturer should just send me that file. I'll print it out immediately. You know, I could have that in a few hours instead of waiting, you know, days or weeks for someone to process my request and get sent it to me.
So I've been around long enough to remember in the 1980s when they were trying to figure out what anybody would actually use a home computer for.
Yeah.
And the first guess was that women would file recipes in their home computer. And obviously that was not what people used home computers for. They used it for spreadsheets, they used it for word processing, they used it for, you know, for communications. Really, when the internet came in, email became 90% of probably what most of us use our computer for. Home repair would be one area that would be sort of the killer app that everyone could use. Or can you think of any others that would sort of put it to the point where you're like, okay, $300, I'm going to buy a home, you know, 3D printer?
Well, we really think the 3D app store is the next big thing, because again, it's relatively hard for you to design things in 3D, but there's a lot of people that do design things in 3D, and there are things that you want. So, you know, like
kids' toys, for example.
Kids' toys, or even sculpture. So, like, I was at in LA at this 3D printing World Expo, and you know, even we were shocked at the quality of these like prints. So, you know, like you could have Michelangelo.
So that was just recently, right?
Yeah, just like last 2 weeks, I think.
Right.
So, like, you know, if you have Michelangelo's David, you know, I guess like people would travel worldwide to go to you know, Italy to go see this sculpture, but you can actually print it at home now and have one yourself pretty much instantly. I think that actually creates a big sense of art available to people too.
So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's the content that's going to drive
I think
the need.
The content is going to drive the need, and that's why we have the unique ability. So most of these printers were kind of just dumb printers where you didn't have the ability to browse the web on your. So the computer wasn't built into the printer. They always focused on, oh, what does an engineer want to design? But we realized there's a bigger market than that. we realized like, there's many talented people are making things that are cool. So we have some cool structures, but like, how would you design them? Like, even we can't design those things, but we get them from other people. And those people want protection, just like, selling songs on MP3. So nobody buys CDs anymore. You just get the MP3 from iTunes or whatever. And that content really drove the sales of like, iPods and iPhones. And we think the same with the 3D printer. So like having that relationship and driving the content. And,
so I'm going back to the content here and thinking, so in other words, I could go into an app store and go to a museum in Europe and say, I want a 12-inch high Rodin.
Yes.
And what materials can I get it in bronze?
Well, right now, like our printer prints in plastic, but you can actually plate it. So you can electroplate it, apply current, it will be bronzed. You can actually investment cast it. So jewelry is a big thing, as I mentioned previously. So you could print it in plastic, and then you can send it off to investment casting, or you can investment cast it yourself and have it made in metal. So there are many different materials. We're working on flexible materials. We're working on ceramics, but variations of plastic. But there's different ways to do it.
So on the B2B side, we've got, certainly I imagine there's a ton of use in the medical sphere.
Yeah, again, like prosthetics are a big thing because every prosthetic is unique to the person. They actually use metal 3D printing to do hip replacements. So like
DIY hip replacement.
well, doctors will print it out.
Okay.
And actually, teeth is a. So we get a lot of inquiries from people trying to fabricate dentures and things like that because again, it's customization. So you don't want a generic hip replacement that goes into your body because you want one specifically to you. So it forms the contours of your body, etc. So that's where we see kind of like the big change. So people want things that are customized. So they will scan your teeth before, and then they'll repair what they need to repair, and then they'll print it out. So you don't get like some random tooth that looks it was pulled out of a bad hip hop movie or something. So it's just like it'll be exactly what you needed because it was 3D printed. And to kind of tool up for tooling, if you make a mold, it could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the complexity of this mold. But you can print it for a few dollars, and that allows customization.
So let's talk a little.
Again, like prosthetics are a big thing because every prosthetic is unique to the person. They actually use metal 3D printing to do hip replacements. So like
DIY hip replacement.
well, doctors will print it out.
Okay.
And actually, teeth is a. So we get a lot of inquiries from people trying to fabricate dentures and things like that because again, it's customization. So you don't want a generic hip replacement that goes into your body because you want one specifically to you. So it forms the contours of your body, etc. So that's where we see kind of like the big change. So people want things that are customized. So they will scan your teeth before, and then they'll repair what they need to repair, and then they'll print it out. So you don't get like some random tooth that looks it was pulled out of a bad hip hop movie or something. So it's just like it'll be exactly what you needed because it was 3D printed. And to kind of tool up for tooling, if you make a mold, it could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the complexity of this mold. But you can print it for a few dollars, and that allows customization.
So let's talk a little bit about the dark side of 3D printing. A lot of attention happened from the 3D gun.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to be something? I mean, obviously, I've been doing a lot in the Bitcoin space lately, and there's a lot of regulators who say it. In New York, they said, "Oh, if one person can go and commit a crime with Bitcoin, we need to go and make sure that doesn't happen, even if we have to shut down the whole system." Paraphrasing, but basically, I think his quote was, "It's better to kill off 1,000 innovations than to let one act of money laundering go through." So, do you feel that there's a threat that if the people who do the 3D guns and things, that you'll have 3D printers be a regulated industry? Or just go after the bad guys? I mean, it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. And then if you think about photocopiers, what was the big thing about color photocopiers? It was that people were going to photocopy money. So, like they actually implemented these like security codes in almost all commercial photocopiers, so you can't like photocopy $100 bills. So maybe they'll implement something like that for weapons. But there was other ways you could have built guns, like CNC machines existed, and that's how they build guns now. So really just putting a block of steel in, I could make a V8 engine block out of a solid block of steel using technology that's existed for 60 years. But I guess it does make it a lot simpler. So people would just hit print and it would pop out. So eventually, you can print whatever you want, but we think that freedom of information is something that's just good for everyone. So, the ability to print ideas. Some people will have good ideas, some people will have bad ideas, but we're not really regulating the ideas. So, we're hoping kind of the social aspect of, printing out cool sculptures is more attractive than printing out guns. It's,
do you think the killer app will be art?
Well,
or home repair, or a combination?
I think there's just like a lot of different things you could do. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, so the thing that I liked about 3D printing is that I could build things and sell them. So, same with our laser cutters. A lot of people start their own home businesses. They have their own design. They print it out, and it's like, how do I make this? Well, I can 3D print it. And you get started. You can establish a market, and that's what excited me about products that build things. So, I could build things not so much because I could build them, but because I could sell them. And I feel that's actually something that's very powerful, to kind of bring the entrepreneur back to everybody's garage. So if you have an idea, say you have a widget for a better toothbrush, you could design that in your computer, you can print it out. Maybe that's your business that drives $1 billion in sales. So I think giving the power to people to make whatever they want is a powerful tool.
Great. I think that's about my questions. I've asked a lot of them. I'd like to turn it over to the audience to ask more. Heard a lot here. John.
As far as the Chinese and patents, are you worried about the Chinese knocking you off at some point? It sounds like you have proprietary technology. Have you protected with patents? And would that make a difference?
Well, we're protected with patents, but I think at the end of the day, you just have to make a better product that people want to buy. So, the Chinese have cars, but nobody buys a Chinese car. So you still buy a car, say from Germany, because you want something that has like the best of its class. And a 3D printer actually has a lot more than what you can see. So we have a lot of software, we have a chemistry, and we also are trying to develop this community. So if we have a community of millions of designers and you can't get on there unless you buy our printer, then that's a powerful tool that will protect us. But at the end of the day, we think it's a free world, and that's what 3D printing gives to people. So they could take our 3D printer, and maybe they'll print their own 3D printer and sell it. So but the idea is that we want to make better tools for people to enable them to push the envelope. So we're happy competing on any level. If they can make a better product, then more power to them. But certainly we have patents that we pursue to kind of protect a few things. But more is just to show people that you have patents, and
Right.
as opposed to really trying to enforce them. So.
Some of the problems with the cheap printers, they don't last very long. The ones that are sold to schools and whatnot. How long? I mean, it sounds like you're the next level up. You have a better printer. How long does it last, essentially? How many products can you make, and that type of thing? It's been kind of an issue in that industry.
Yeah, so that was the problem with the old 3D printers. They're basically a hot glue gun, and then what happens is they get jammed, and they have a lot of complexity. They have a lot of motors. So we actually have some very key innovations. We reduced our motors down to one motor. So there's only a single motor. It moves only in one axis. So that's actually a recent innovation that we have. And we use a laser that's the same laser that's used in your Blu-ray player. So how long does your Blu-ray player last? It's years and years and years. So that laser is very reliable, solid state. There's no moving parts. So it makes the printer much more reliable. And there's nothing to jam up because we're using a beam of light, and we hit a liquid and solidifies. So the overall design is actually much better. So we think, again, this is the 2.0 of 3D printing, not just in the mechanical developments, but also in this community that we're trying to establish. So kind of creating the content. So why do people want a 3D printer? And that's the question we get asked a lot. And once we show people all these amazing things that they can do, it's like, oh, now I want one. So, but we want to give them the ability to easily print things that they want to print without going through the hassle of kind of drawing it yourself and so forth.
Do you see there being sort of a Moore's law in terms of continuing better quality and price drops like every 18 months, or a lose law?
Well, I think that's true for any kind of technology. Eventually, we think it'll hit a plateau. But yeah, we're always amazed what comes out every year in the 3D printing space. But we actually thought there was kind of a stagnant thing. So everybody went back to what people wanted before. So I think we were quite innovative in making the 3D printing store, and then trying to think out of the box. So trying to think of the next best thing. But certainly there's a lot of smart people, and we think there'll be continual improvements.
How many apps are there available right now in 3D printing, and where do you see that growing?
Well, there's a lot of like websites that you can download 3D models, but then the difference is that you download them to your computer. They're not pre-tested. So it's kind of the same thing with like iTunes. So iTunes just made it super easy for you to get a song. You paid 99 cents. It wasn't even worth it for you to go through, to jump on Napster anymore, and then find a song that worked out because it wasn't like corrupted or whatever. So you kind of drop the price down to where people are willing to pay like $1 or $2 for an amazing model that took someone hundreds of hours to make. We think that's a powerful tool. But like we're just starting up, so we're establishing demand with artists. So we give 100% of what we make back to the artists. So whatever they charge, it's up to them, and then we give that 100% back to the artist. So we're just really establishing the community for you to print different things.
And do you make it sort of plug and play so that they develop the model instead of having to upload it and set parameters? It just you make it compatible to theirs. You just press print for the model, or
exactly. So all the models on our app store are pre-tested.
Okay.
So they come to us. So a 3D print actually has a number of components. So it's not you can just print anything. So suppose you had balls inside of a race, and they're suspended in the air. They need something to support it. So you have to add supports in. You have to ensure that the supports are properly placed. So our software does that, but you still have to tweak it a little bit to test it. But in our 3D printing store, what's different is that we test every model, and we upload the model pre-tested. So literally, you just browse it just as you would browse a catalog. You hit, I want this, you print it, it just pops out, and you'll be 100% every time.
Right now, you mentioned that you sell the plastic specific to your laser. How much work is going on in terms of material science where people are trying or working on introducing other materials that could be used on a 3D printer? Let's say it could be stronger or even electrostatic of some sort.
Well, there's a lot of plastic. So like plastic in general, it could be flexible like rubber. It can be hard. You have good toughness like ABS. So we're continuously developing new plastics. Again, some plastics melt out and are suitable for investment casting. So we're experimenting with that. So we have a big chemistry lab actually in our building too. So and we're also making other 3D printers. We're planning to. So we sell laser cutters now that cut 1/4-inch plate steel on a day-to-day basis. So we're working on 3D metal printers that can print directly from metal. We'll have other materials like ceramics and stuff available also.
Well, the reason I'm asking that, I'm in medical, and materials are very important in medical.
Yes.
So the FDA won't even approve something unless it has certain strength requirements, longevity requirements. And so plastic didn't seem like it would be a feasible thing to use for a prosthetic, for example, that was implantable.
Well, you have a lot of things like silicones and and sometimes you produce the mold and then you can inject the metal into it. So like investment casting, you build the plastic part.
Right.
What you do is you dip it in slurry. It forms a ceramic shell, and then you melt out the plastic, leaving it hollow, and you pour metal into it,
Right.
creating the metal part. But so there's a lot of ways around it. But certainly, plastic is one of the first components in a 3D printer.
Okay, thank you.
yes.
In your app store, where are the items that you purchase printed? Just at your printer, or do you print it locally and ship the item to the buyer?
So no, our 3D printer has a touch screen on it, and it's connected to the internet and connected to our app store, on the internet. So you print it directly from your printer. So that saves on shipping, and it allows anybody to just find pre-tested models. It's actually really hard now. So if you have a 3D printer, we spent hours and hours finding cool things to print for our demos. And we realized that frustration. Some of the models wouldn't work out, they would fail, they would have holes in them. But we really want a centralized place. So it's just like when you go to iTunes. Every iTunes is perfect. and it comes from a respectable place. If you buy apps from the Apple Store, every app is tested. You're supposed to do the basic things, and that's what we want to give, like, a better user experience to people who are new to 3D printing, and drive the content that will sell the printers.
So if I really want something in the App Store, I gotta buy your printer first?
Well, you can pay somebody that has our printer too. So
Oh, okay.
There's always a workaround, I think.
Okay.
Which is why I think some people will decide to go to a service bureau because they only need a piece of 3D printing 2 or 3 times a year. On the other hand, if they need it 1,000 times a year, or they need it 1,000 pieces, then they're going to buy the printer.
Or if they want it now. So
Right.
like it's actually interesting. So a service bureau is not that fast. If you print something like Shakeways, like some of them are okay, but some of them have 2-3 week lead times.
Yep.
So you have to wait 2-3 weeks for them. How do they make money? They basically take a whole bunch of projects and they lay them all out at the same time and they print them. Because if they were printed one at a time, it would take forever. So they kind of batch them all together and then they mail them out. So you could be waiting 2-3 weeks for them to kind of have a free printer. And they also want to stay busy, so they don't want to buy more printers than they need. So there's not always one free. So if you want something immediately, then you really want your own 3D printer, and that's really where the advantage comes in. But again, the shipping is also very expensive. The overnight things, overnight shipping, that's how FedEx makes 90% of their money. It's not the ground service that pays for it, it's the overnight shipping. So if you need something quickly, then it's much more economical to have your own printer.
Yes, the black.
Can you, I know we kind of touched on a bunch of kind of examples on when that could be useful, but can you kind of elaborate on real case business examples of that would, this product would make it easier, faster, cheaper, when it would, whether it's maybe an apartment key or something, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, customization is a big thing. So if you're only going to build one, turbine for this plane a year, then GE will buy $1 million 3D printer to directly print this metal part instead of spending tens of millions of dollars on unique tooling to build this part. But again, we think there's a lot more than what's been seen in the past. So we think artists will come in, print cool structures, and if you see something like in a movie, if you want it right then, you can have it printed out and it comes out. But we see a lot of entrepreneurs. So I went to this hardware innovation workshop, and there were guys who were making UAV drones. So they had a new unique design. They've 3D printed all their parts. We had guys who were making a game controller, so Xbox game controller. But people really wanted to touch and feel of it. So that's very important in gaming to have an understanding of how it feels in your hand. So a 3D printer is great for that. There were guys who were making hearing aids. Again, mold costs are actually quite high, and it's not just the price, but also the time to market. So by the time you have mold done, I went to China recently. And we saw a mold for this baby seat, and I was shocked when they told me it took them 8 months to make that mold. It's a giant piece of metal. It weighed several tons, but they have to test it. They have to do some test shots. They have to smooth it down a bit more. Send it back to you in the U.S. Get your approval. Sand it down a bit more. This whole process takes months and months. But if you're selling something that changes every 6 months, like a new iPhone, you really need something that you can have right away. You don't want to be waiting months for your prototypes to be popular.
Do you see partnerships with Chinese companies then? Manufacturing companies to say hey, go to our app store and you can, basically look at, I want to create this product, and like you said, that process takes such a long time. Communication is kind of a problem. Do you see some times like that as well?
Well, we see bringing manufacturing back to America, which is something, and bringing it back to your garage. So
Right.
you can, instead of having these plastic parts pop out of a factory in Shenzhen and then you waiting, several weeks to months for it to arrive on the boat, you can print it at home. But really what we see is and we're always amazed by the power of, people's ideas. So they have an idea, they make it, they 3D print it, and that's what kind of gives me a great satisfaction. Because I like to be an entrepreneur, I like to make things, I like to sell them. But giving that power to other people I think is also very powerful.
Yes.
Are there any benefits of 3D printing with something like self-publishing, so books, magazines, that sort of thing?
Well, I guess like you self-publish, say your art. So like if I design some new cool structure, a cool new face, a new Disney character, I could print it out. But certainly there's other technologies that allow you to do production. So if I was going to print books, then I think I'd just print them on my printer, not on my 3D printer. But
You have a fancy cover, I suppose.
yeah, you can make like a fancy cover or something. But yeah, in reality, the 3D printer is not that fast, and it's kind of slow for a lot of things. But like it's fast when you want it. So if I had to ship something overnight, it's still not going to run until the next morning. So by that time, I could have 3D printed it and had it several hours earlier. But particular things that you just can't manufacture. So like we have a piece that's a rook. It has a spiral staircase on the inside and a double helix. There's really no way to manufacture that with any other process besides 3D printing. So it really kind of frees you from constraints of traditional manufacturing. So by that time, I could have 3D printed it and had it several hours earlier. But particular things that you just can't manufacture. So like we have a piece that's a rook. It has a spiral staircase on the inside and a double helix. There's really no way to manufacture that with any other process besides 3D printing. So it really kind of frees you from constraints of traditional manufacturing.
John?
It's a funny question. Do you give tours of your facility? You actually bringing groups in from different countries and whatnot to Las Vegas. Be sure nice to take them to someplace high tech, products they might want to buy, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, we have a showroom that's open 9 to 6, so we have 25 people in our office, about 2 miles from the airport, so we can always entertain some people.
Right?
Yes.
What sort of software do you write with the artists write the content in?
Well, content is, they have a lot of different programs, so mechanical engineers use a program usually like SolidWorks or AutoCAD Inventor. Artists use usually things like ZBrush or 3D Studio Max. So 3D printing has a general file called STL, stereolithography file, developed by 3D Systems, which was one of the pioneers in 3D printing. So it's a file format that almost all 3D printers use, so it's very standardized.
Anyone else? Yes.
Have you seen anything on the recent horizon to increase the speed of 3D printing? You just said it's relatively slow. Is there anything that's going to speed it up? I mean, I know we always get inventive, but have you seen anything directly that's like, oh, that's going to...
Well, but by using a laser, our 3D printer actually is 2 to 6 times faster. I mean, it still takes several hours, but it's 2 to 3 times faster, 2 to 6 times faster. So instead of taking 24 hours, it could take like 8 hours. And that is constantly improving. So, but I think the process itself is just kind of a slow process. You're building things layer by layer. So imagine printing a book, and every time you print it is like one slice. So you have to print thousands of pages before it becomes an object.
Have you 3D printed food yet?
It's interesting actually you asked that. So like when we were at the trade show in LA, there's a company that uses it's a bakery, and they print a 3D printed sculpture for bakery. So they print they use powdered sugar, and they basically eject water, and that creates these amazing like flower structures, and you have like little statuettes that go on top of cakes, but you can actually have your face and your body shape on a statuette on the cake. So yeah, again, customization. So like you want something unique, and you can do that with a 3D printer.
What about shirts and like shoes? Can you print some of that sort of stuff? That's
Well, we have actually sold a lot of laser cutters for that purpose. So a shirt is really more like a 2D product. So we have a lot of people that buy laser cutters. They cut fabric. Then you still have to sew it together where you need the seam, of course. But leather bags are actually a big seller for our laser cutters. So people will cut the leather pieces and just sew where it needs to be sewn together. So before, I guess you'd have to buy like a template that you print out, and you physically cut it with like scissors, and then you would sew it. But with a laser, it's traced with a laser accuracy, and you can basically anything you could draw you could just cut out with a laser cutter. So a laser cutter is actually a very popular tool in textiles.
There's a guy who spoke at UNLV, Ray Kurzweil. Supposedly America's #1 futurist, and he said that he thought 3D printing would take off in like 5 to 7 years when the resolution got from what it is, according to him, currently 2 microns to under a micron. What is the resolution of your machines?
Well, most 3D printers are in the hundreds of microns. So, like, what do you mean by resolution? Z resolution is a popular thing. So, that's how thick each layer is. So you basically build a 2D device or a 2D slice, and you stack another one on top. So what's the thickness of that layer? A lot of 3D printers now are kind of in the 100 micron range. We can print down to 5 microns if we wanted to. Our XY resolution can be 3 microns, so we have 16 bits over 7 inches. But like, honestly, 100 microns is pretty good. You can't see it unless you're looking at it under a loop. So it depends what you're trying to do. So you're trying to make, nano chips or something, then you'll need like 1 micron accuracy. But I think if you're just trying to print a structure or, a part that's usable, then, 100 microns is more than enough. And the surface finish is very smooth. So, you can print things that look like they're injection molded, parts. So, especially with a laser 3D printer, we have very good surface finish. And the resolution, I think, looking at our models is useful for a lot of applications.
Time for 1 or 2 more? Yes.
You could actually print circuit, I know some people are trying to do printed circuit boards using different types of, usually that's considered 2D, but I assume you could do some of that almost 3D.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that. So our laser can harden circuit boards. So you can actually print circuit boards from our printer. We have like a little video on our Kickstarter to show that actually. But you can't print things like ICs and capacitors and resistors, but the traces you can print out actually through our 3D printer. So what happens is, like, some circuit boards are coated in UV resist, and we have a UV laser, so it hits the UV resist, and that creates the trace. So you can actually print circuit boards actually on our printers.
One last question? Anybody? Okay, well, thank you for coming. Thank our guest, Henry. Great application, the state of the art of 3D printing. Great company, an entrepreneur based right here in Vegas near Russell and Sandhill. And they do have office hours and tours and all that. And so, and Henry will be back there with his printer. If you hadn't looked at it before, you should look at it and some of its output.